This is our nutrition for fitness and life section, in which we'll use our MyFitnessPal information to enhance the basic information. So let's talk about what is healthy nutrition, because that's our focus in this section. And it is a diet that supplies all the essential nutrients. So let's define what a non-essential and essential nutrient is, so that it'll allow us to focus on the essential nutrients that we need in our diet. So a non-essential nutrient is essentially a nutrient that the body can produce in adequate amounts regardless of whether I get it in my diet or not. However, an essential nutrient is one that it's essential that I eat that nutrient and I get enough in my diet, because my body is not able to produce it or produce it in adequate amounts for optimal health. So we're going to be focusing on those essential nutrients that we need to get in our diet. And what we really want to focus on too with the essential nutrients is getting the right amount of energy. Not too many calories, not too few calories, but at the same time getting all the nutrients that we need to maintain body weight. There are 6 essential nutrients, and we're going to talk about those. First, we'll talk about the category of macronutrients. And macronutrients are just nutrients that we need in large quantities in our diet for health. So the first one listed there is water. Just a reminder that water, unless there's something added to it, has 0 calories. And then carbohydrates, which have 4 calories per gram. Fats, which are 9 calories per gram, more than twice carbohydrates. And then proteins, which are 4 calories per gram, the same as carbohydrates. So those 4 are macronutrients. And we have 2 micronutrients. So micronutrients are nutrients that are essential for health, but we need them in smaller quantities in our diet for optimal health. So those would be our vitamins and minerals, both of which are also 0 calories per gram, just like water. And just a note here, alcohol is not an essential nutrient, but it does contain 7 calories per gram. That's the alcohol itself. If you were, for example, looking at a margarita, which is a mixed drink, which has a lot of added sugar, that would be calories above and beyond the actual 7 calories per gram in the alcohol that's in the drink. So alcohol can be a source of additional unwanted calories for a lot of folks. Next, let's talk about the first macronutrient, which will start with carbohydrates. It's important to understand the 2 types of carbohydrates. The first one we'll talk about is simple carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is often abbreviated CHO because it's such a long word. And so we typically think of the simple carbohydrates primarily as being unhealthy, because these are your simple sugars. And a simple sugar is a sugar that's only 1 or 2 molecules. It's not the long chains of sugars that we see with complex carbohydrates. The problem with carbohydrates that are simple are that they break down really quickly, and so you get a big energy rush followed by a crash, especially if you eat a carbohydrate that's simple by itself, and there's no fat or protein to slow the emptying from the stomach. And when we think of types of foods that would come under simple carbohydrate, or that contain a lot of simple carbohydrates, are like candy and baked goods, sodas, candy bars, junk food, because they're so high in calories that are really non-essential, that we don't need, don't provide any nutrition, what they're called empty calories. They lead to weight gain and like we said, they're empty calories, so they don't really have any vitamins, minerals, or fiber that are important health-wise. The second category of carbohydrates are complex carbohydrates. And these, as we mentioned earlier, are the long chains of sugar molecules that we see in grains, pastas, fruits, and vegetables. And grains and pastas that are whole grain are actually more complex and better than just your plain, for example, white rice, white pasta. And in these, because they're long chains of sugar molecules, they break down more slowly. So you don't get that big rush of energy like you do with a simple sugar and then kind of a big loss of energy. And so this way, these long chains are broken down slowly, so they provide a steady source of energy. And as we said earlier, the unrefined, meaning the whole grain types of pasta and breads, that sort of thing, are a lot more healthy because they provide a lot of fiber, vitamins, minerals, in addition just to the complex carbohydrates. And they also are very important from the perspective that they help prevent disease, especially when we're talking about type 2 diabetes and colon cancer. Let's look at the dietary recommendations for carbohydrate intake. The recommendation is 45 to 65% of our total calories each day should come from carbohydrates. Where we fall in that range will depend on how much physical activity we get. So, for example, if an individual doesn't get much physical activity, they wouldn't need as many carbohydrates as someone who gets a lot of activity. Let's just say someone exercises daily, they do long duration or higher intensity, then they're going to need more carbohydrates. So they would be taking in percentage of, say, 55 to 65%, versus an individual who was trying to lose weight. Perhaps an individual who's obese or had diabetes would do better working at the low end of that range. So maybe 45 to 50% of their total calories coming from carbohydrate. So let's use this example of an individual who takes in 2,000 calories a day, and that's a perfect number for them in that they're able to maintain an optimal body weight there. And we'll say that they exercise 30, 40 minutes, 3 to 4 days a week. So not excessively high exercise, but certainly a good, healthy amount. So we'll put them right in the middle of that range of 55% carbohydrate that's recommended. So if we take their 2,000 calories and multiply it times 55%, which we would have to move the decimal 2 places to the left, multiply times 0.55, that would tell me that that individual needs 1,100 calories of carbohydrate each day. Now, if I wanted to determine how many grams of carbohydrate that would be, I could use that conversion of every gram of carbohydrate is 4 calories. So if I take the 1,100 calories and divide it by 4 calories for each gram of carbohydrate, that means I would need 275 grams of carbohydrate each day. And another recommendation, as we talked about earlier, in terms of not getting too many simple sugars into our diet, is that we should limit the sugar intake to less than 150 calories for men, not more than 100 calories for women. Next, let's talk about fiber, which is a plant-based carbohydrate nutrient, and which we sometimes call roughage. But unlike carbohydrates, which we said have the 4 calories per gram of energy, fiber itself cannot be broken down into digestible sugar molecules. And it essentially passes through the intestinal tract undigested, intact. And what it does, it provides roughage, as we mentioned earlier, which can prevent constipation, can also bind to cholesterol and sugar and keep it from being absorbed into the body. So it can help lower blood sugar, lower cholesterol levels. It also lowers the risk of colon cancer. So fiber is very important, but unfortunately, most Americans don't get nearly the amount of fiber that they should. And the National Institute for Health recommends that you get 30 to 38 grams a day for men and 25 grams a day for women between 18 and 50 years of age. So fiber is a very important nutrient that gets neglected by many folks. There are 2 types of fiber. One is soluble, one is insoluble. So let's talk about soluble first. This is the type of fiber that combines with blood glucose and cholesterol and helps prevent their absorption. And this, again, can help lower blood sugar levels, especially in someone who's diabetic or has high cholesterol levels. Where do we get sources of soluble fiber? Beans, oatmeal, peas, citrus fruits, blueberries, apples, barley are just a few examples of good sources of soluble fiber. Now, insoluble fiber, on the other hand, essentially will pass through the digestive tract totally undigested. And what they do is essentially move the contents through our colon faster. And so by moving the chemicals that are in our food and so forth, they get into our digestive tract through there faster. They don't have as much contact with the intestinal tract itself. So it reduces the risk of colon cancer, decreases the risk of constipation, also pulls water through your intestinal tract as the fiber moves through there as well. Some good examples of foods that have insoluble fiber are whole wheat and whole wheat flour, wheat bran, brown rice, cauliflower, potatoes, cucumbers, tomatoes. Those are all good examples. And a lot of foods like nuts, carrots are good sources of both types of fiber. And there are a good number of foods that actually contain both soluble and insoluble fiber. So we need some of both.